let me just get straight into it. Yes, Superman is good. Yes, Superman is worth spending your money in a movie theater to go watch it. I thought it was a good film. It had its negatives and it had its positives. And I would say the positives outweigh the negatives this time. Typically, I'm not a big fan of the DCU or any of the movies associated, but this one was done right. This one was done well. And now moving forward, we will be discussing the film in great detail. So, this is your warning. Yes, your warning. Spoiler alert, where it's going to happen. I'm just going to talk about it. So, one thing I did really enjoy from the absolute get-go is that they understood that we as an audience know who Superman is, know the story of him getting sent from Krypton to Earth and yada yada this and yada yada that. We know the story of Superman, and it doesn't play around. It moves straight into Superman current day. This is what he's doing in his life. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the fact that they let us know that they're not going to waste our time from the beginning of the film. It instantly jumped into the thick of the plot, almost. It introduced this really cool fight scene with Lex Luthor and the Bavarian, however he wanted to pronounce his name, Hammer, right? And it has Superman fighting this Hammer guy who's controlled by Lex Luthor. And I thoroughly enjoyed Lex Luthor's role as a villain. I can't remember the actor's name who played Luthor, but he did a phenomenal job. He played a greedy, stuck-up super scientist whose goal was to truly kill Superman. And I appreciate that. I have always thought in the DCU that the villains weren't up to par, and by DCU, I'm not including the Batman trilogy, I guess the Dark Knight trilogy. That wasn't DCU. You got to remember, I don't think Batman has a picture in the DCU yet. But to me, in my opinion, the DCU fell flat a long time ago. It was really hard to watch any of the stuff they were putting out. And Superman is kind of starting to be that light at the end of the tunnel. It introduced Krypto the Superdog, which was awesome. Very well CGI done with Krypto the dog. I mean, it provided this point of relief and laughter that didn't feel forced, right? The movie overall was pretty serious, right? Lex Luthor is trying to do his thing, and of course Superman is here to stop him. But at points, you got, for example, Krypto chasing Mr. Terrific's little drone and playing fetch with it. And then Superman using that to then get the Lex Luthor drones. Krypto was used very well, and as somebody who enjoyed watching Krypto the Superdog, if you remember that cartoon, it was really nice to see him represented on the big silver screen in a live-action version of Superman. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the use of the backup Green Lantern, right? It wasn't Hal Jordan. It was the secondary, I can't even remember his name, but basically the way he got chosen is came down to 1-1, Hal Jordan and this other dude, and Hal Jordan got picked, and other dude got put as number 2. And he was just backup Green Lantern. And I really enjoyed how they used backup Green Lantern. I really did. I enjoyed Hawk Girl. I enjoyed what I assumed to be Martian Manhunter, but I'm not quite sure who he is because I don't think they gave him a name. I enjoyed a lot about this film. Now, the negatives about this film is I kind of felt like the pacing for the story was a little off at some points. It would have made much more sense to me on the scene where Superman is at his parents' house in Kansas and he's recovering. And then it switches to a scene where Lex Luthor can be seen opening this split dimension portal that has a black hole at the end of it. It can be seen that he's opening it up in real time. and then it flips back to Superman being at the house. And while they did show us that it got Superman's attention fast, and he put on his costume and he put on his boots and he flew off and he started fighting, it kind of felt like one of those scenes needed to happen first. You know what I mean? Like, in either order, I don't care, but the way that they broke it up was strange. And honestly, that's my biggest complaint. That's one of the bigger things I didn't like about the movie. Other than that, I was thoroughly pleased with it. I was entertained. I found myself smiling throughout the majority of the 2 hours and 10 minutes that I was in the theater. So that's always a bright sign. I really enjoyed the co-villain, I guess, the clone of Superman that Lex Luthor was using to beat Superman. It was very cool and very entertaining to see the way that Superman got himself out of this predicament. Because the entire film, this guy, is whooping Superman's ass. I mean, he is getting after it. And Lex Luthor is behind him going, B4 and C30. And it sounds like a bingo game, honestly, when Lex Luthor is calling these moves to beat Superman up. And when Superman finally realizes, through information that Luthor had given him, just because Luthor is being the evil villain, revealing his master plan, like an evil villain would. He thinks it's going to go through, so of course he's going to give away every detail, and he lets it slip that while the clone of Superman may be a one-for-one clone, he's not all there in the head, and what he lacks for brains, it makes up for in bronze. Or brawn. I don't know why I said bronze, but it makes up for in brawn. And so in Lex Luthor's head, he has the brains, and then Superman's clone, Hero Man, I think is honestly what his name was, which I thought was really lame. I could be wrong there, so don't completely quote me, and it occurs to Superman about halfway through the last fight that he's getting his ass kicked, but Luthor quite literally told him how to defeat him, and that's in the end what ended up happening. Like I mentioned before, Krypto grabbed all of Luthor's drones, and Superman started laying the whoop ass on him when he wasn't able to control the clone of Superman anymore. And I thought that was a really cool fight. I thought how Superman used Lex Luthor's own thoughts against him, brains beat brawn, huh? Well, and he's like, brains, and then Krypton did his thing, he whistled. And another thing I thoroughly enjoyed was both the ability that Lois Lane was able to distinguish Superman from Clark Kent, and Clark Kent from Superman. It was a cool dynamic to see them actually in the relationship, because the majority of the time Superman was always kind of chasing Lois Lane, but to be introduced as they're already dating, they're already together, that was a cool additive. The whole scene where Lois Lane is interviewing Superman, it is interesting. It shows the thoughts that go on behind Superman's eyes, why he does what he does. For just general knowledge and information, he stops a war in the movie, and that becomes like a big political point, because to their knowledge, Superman is from the United States, and he intervened on one of America's allies launching an invasion into this other country. And it is very interesting to see Superman's thoughts behind it, because typically you don't get an interview with Superman, right? When do you ever in a superhero movie get to interview the superhero and figure out what their thoughts are, why they did what they did, what pushes them every day? So that definitely, the whole heated tension scene behind Lois Lane's interview with Superman was quite honestly one of my favorite parts of the movie. And I had a lot of favorite parts now that I'm realizing it. So overall, yes, Superman is worth the watch in theaters. I highly recommend it. I would probably give it an 8, 8.5 out of 10. 9s and 9.5 and 10s. There are only a few movies in my reservoir that have earned anything past an 8 or an 8.5. 8.5 is definitely, this is good but not perfect kind of range, right? Anything under 5, I'd never watch again. So anything under 7, I don't recommend, just to give you guys an update on the scale. But yeah, I would give it an 8, 8.5. I would go watch it again. It made me interested in the reboot of the DCU, right? They announced that kind of like MCU is rebooting right now. The DCU is also rebooting. They're going to get, different characters to play different heroes, and I'm excited. With James Gunn behind the wheel of Superman, it was a very enjoyable film. I would go watch it again. And with that, that's all I have. So you guys have a good night. Thank you for tuning in. As always, like, subscribe. The buttons are down there. Once I hit 100 subscribers and 200 followers on Twitch, we still got that 24-hour stream planned. So until then, wash your socks, brush your teeth, and subscribe to The Kevin Show. You guys have a wonderful night. Goodbye.